pushes way up the racetrack, and now here comes Janzik. Janzik goes by Query, and he goes by Inman. Burnell gets a great run, another 3 wide for the race lead. It's going to drag race off of turn 4. Shepard is there, but it's Larry White at the line. Still going to be Pat Ward, and they make contact. Britton has broken the race car. AJ Slideways. Alan Johnson wins.
Whether you hug the infield tires or rip the cushion, you found the fastest dirt track podcast in motorsports. Welcome to Where Legends Are Made, the official podcast of Land of Legends Raceway. Here's Stephen and Brad Ovens.
Hey fans, welcome into another episode of Where Legends Are Made, the official podcast of Land of Legends Raceway. Your lead announcer, Steve Ovens, with you here again this week as we bring a different interview. We're going to bring you an interview with not somebody that makes headlines on the track, and maybe makes headlines isn't the right term, because I don't think anybody on the tech team ever wants to make headlines. But we've got Nolan Crowley in with us this week, who's got a really interesting story. One of our staff members at the Land of Legends got a really interesting story that I thought would be fun to share. I've had some conversations with Nolan online this off season, and Nolan will tell you we're two guys that seem to pass each other at the beginning of the night, but when I'm in the tower and he's working with David Guerry and the boys on the tech team in the pits, we don't get too much interaction on race night. So this is kind of fun to catch up and Nolan, get your story. So welcome in, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into even how you got involved at the Land of Legends, you've got a really interesting story in racing, and even before we get into some of the roles that you've served in your adult life, let's talk about how racing came on your radar. Where did you grow up in racing, and how was it that you came to be involved?
Yeah, so mom and dad, when I was really little, when I was 2, used to bring me to the Canandaigua a lot, and that's pretty much how it started. Just like anybody in any racetrack environment or racing state, your parents, mom or dad, brings you to the racetrack, and you fall in love with it, and it just kind of becomes more of like a good disease in a way. I can remember playing with cars on the floor, putting Play-Doh in the wheels to pretend they're mud plugs and stuff like that. So
I like it.
All the things kids would do when they were little. So yeah, I've been going to the racetrack for a long time. Used to go to Watkins Glen a lot since I was 2, and we would share both dirt and asphalt at the same time. So yeah, I can thank mom and dad for that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us that are in that boat, right? Now, something that you mentioned online this week I saw was, and this is kind of a funny story. Scott Hickson, his very first year flagging at Canandaigua, I was not even working in media. I was just going to the races to watch and have a good time. And I happened to snap a picture from Canandaigua that year on opening day, and Scott's there, waving the green flag on a heat race, I believe it was. And you guys had an interaction from him resharing that picture this week, and so it sounded like you had seen some of his work as a young guy watching the races at Black Rock too.
Yeah, I also went down there as well, not just only to Canandaigua, but my dad and grandparents would go to Black Rock a lot, and I'd have a set of flags with me, and I would flag there for a little while, and Scott brought me up in the flag stand. I think it was like 2009. This is a long time ago, and it was pretty cool. And that just was a cool memory to have. I'm like, wow, that's a long time ago. And when he posted that was like, wow, I can't believe that he's sharing that memory, and I'm like, well, I can share memory too of what you did that impacted my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a memory shock in my opinion.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and I even, Scott and I, the very first night of racing every year, we down at Woodhull Raceway with the staff that I worked down there. We used to call them board meetings in the concession stand. Of just getting together and shooting the breeze, and either reflecting on a fun night, or maybe it was a couple days before a really big event. But Scott and I have that board meeting, the either practice day, or the first day of racing, a couple hours, just as the pits are getting opened, and things are, starting to happen. We take that minute to just connect, and kind of reflect on how crazy, for both of us, how things have transpired to land us where we were. And he mentioned that, talking about that picture this week. He said, it's kind of crazy how, we had no idea that we'd be working together at the racetrack back in, what, 2012, 2013. And I say it is crazy because I wasn't even, before I got into announcing, I was trying to work as a freelance writer, and trying to write interesting stories about the sport and the people that make it happen. And announcing at that point in time that I snapped that picture of his first race flag in there, what, being in media or being announced, it wasn't even on the radar. So it's just funny how, stories like that, or stories like, you going to BlackRock as, as a younger guy, flagging and emulating what he did, and then him bringing you on the flag. So it's crazy how things come full circle. 11, 12, 13 years later, to see, where everybody's individual story lands them. So it's that is pretty cool. Now you mentioned, and you shared with me too, something that I thought was pretty cool. You had a couple of newspaper clippings of some drivers that your family was involved helping out, which go back to the mid '90s.
Yeah, my dad worked on Mark Hawkins' crew in the '90s, and they started out. I think it was a novice class or street stocks, and then they went to the expert class, and then they had a big block for a little bit. And this is just what I've remembered from what my dad told me. And then they went to Canandaigua for a little bit. They had enough of that. They sold the big block and bought a small block, and decided to run for points and the championship down at BlackRock. And I believe they won the championship in '96 or '95. I'm pretty sure it's those 2 years. But my dad, yeah, he was a fabricator for the team, and I believe that's how it all got started for me. Because I wasn't born in the '90s. I was born in 2000, and I was adopted. So I'm pretty sure that's a big reason why I have a pathway into dirt racing, because dad used to work on someone's team in the '90s. So
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, that's yeah, and I think you're right. I'm thinking that you're right on in 95, because and I don't know why this is, but for some reason Billy Van Pelt in 96 sticks out to me. I think 96 was the year Van Pelt won, and then what, not long after that, Steve Payne, Charlie Donk, Gil Tag, like then that era, ushers in to Dundee, and those guys were untouchable, back then. Um, so that's yeah, I think you're right on that. You're pretty darn close on those years. Um, Now let's, we know your interest, your background in racing, but something that as you and I started talking more, but in preparation for the interview, I found so fascinating was your involvement in the sport now. I mean, folks might see you around the pit area, around the racetrack as a tech official, but there's a lot of people that if they've never met you, they never introduced themselves to you, might have no idea the kind of work on a pit crew side that you've done in your past.
Yeah, if we're referring to the sports car history,
Yeah,
so I've worked on both the series side as an official and team side. So on the series side, I worked for GT World Challenge as a tech official for TC America for 3.5 years. And that was an interesting experience. I was like the third in charge guy of the touring cars, and we'd only had like maybe 25 cars on a race weekend, and it was pretty cool. It's much different teching those cars than it is teching dirt cars, and it is. I mean, we would look at data, we would look at more things on computers than necessarily scales and all that,
hmm
and it wouldn't necessarily be like looking at motors. And you can definitely tell the differences in what we tech and what dirt techs, but it's the same aspect, just we're looking at different things. And then for the team side, I've worked on GT3 teams and LMP2 teams. And what I did was I would do some bodywork stuff and fuel stuff and pretty much anything that the mechanics needed help with, I would help out with. The best highlight I can have or I can share is when I worked at PR1 Motorsports in 2022, we won the 6 hours of Watkins Glen, and I think that year we won the team and drivers championship as well, and the endurance championship or endurance cup. So that, I decided to leave that world just because for some reason, I really wanted to come back to dirt. I feel like I kind of have done it all in sports car because that's where, I've told a couple people, dirt's where I begun. It's where my heart is. And anytime I'm like sim racing or I'm like thinking about something, something always refers back to like a dirt modified or, me sitting in the grandstands in turn 4 at Canandaigua flagging and just reminiscing about the good old days. You know, so yeah, that's just a part of like my sports car history as well. It's just, I worked tech and I worked on the team side, and it was fun for a while. And then you realize that airports and hotels probably aren't the healthiest lifestyle in the world.
Sure.
And it gets stressful because, airports, you don't want to miss your flight, or you don't want to be, too late, or, you worry about anybody in the world will worry about a plane.
Yeah.
And then you got to worry about the rides and all that to the hotel and the track. So it's a lot of logistics that are involved. And after a while, I'm just like, this isn't my life anymore. I think I've done it all, and um, you know, uh, it just kind of is what it is at the end of the day. And now I'm moved on, and now I'm in dirt.
That win at Watkins Glen, that had to be pretty special. I mean, getting a hometown win at a place you'd gone to for a long time as a kid. That's pretty. I gotta believe that's a big highlight.
It was. What was crazy was all the people that I worked with on that team. Because I mentioned to you before that I flagged in the grandstands there for a long time, and a lot of those guys remembered who I was because I had been featured on like the Speed Channel and Fox Sports, and I was interviewed by, I believe he's still a reporter, Brian Till, on the Speed Channel and the grandstands when I used to flag there for a super super long time. And a lot of the guys on that team, they're like, "Oh, that's who you were." I'm like, "Yeah, this is who I am now." So, um, and I still keep in contact with every single one of them to this day. So it was a really awesome highlight to win at your home track as a team member. Because I've never felt that before. I've never felt, because I had worked on a team the year prior and we did horrible. I think we finished third to last in class, and just we wrecked the car at least twice that day. So
Mm. The race that your team won, what was the biggest challenge or biggest hurdle you guys had to overcome that day?
well, we had two cars on that team. And when you're racing with two cars on the team, you have to realize that it's not just a single, one car single focus. And the pit stops were the biggest challenge because uh, sometimes the other team would beat us out, or they'd be running a completely different strategy. And the 52 car was like the main headline car. And yeah, the pit stops were always the challenge. So we always had to make sure that we would do our best in each pit to get the car out fast. But yeah, that was the challenge. And I thought that the challenge was just staying ahead of another rival team that was also good. But no, it was in the pits.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's that all plays into it, right? You know, the strategy, that's it does takes a bit more than just the on-track action. So your story of how you became involved at Land of Legends was a story of persistence, I'll say. From discovering that you had a desire to want to be involved to actually becoming involved, and I think for anybody that wants to get involved in racing, and no matter what side of it, whether it's driving, being on a pit crew, being as a part of the raceway staff. I think that your story of identifying that you had the interest and honestly just presenting yourself and being visible was a key part.
Yeah, I think after a while, when I did step out of the sports car world, and even before, I always had this desire to want to work at Land of Legends, and it always came came in my mind of like, all right, how am I going to do this, and who do I know? And I believe I was sitting at home one day, and Dad and I were planning to go to one of the Super Dirt Series show, and I texted CJ Guerreri, who's another very good friend of mine who I've known because we actually, one thing I forgot to mention is how I met those guys is we used to help another kid guy. Uh, he used to run a street stock there for just a little bit. It didn't last very long, but I met because we used to park next to those guys for a little bit, and that's how I met those guys, the Guerreris. And fast forward to what I was saying before, I reached out to CJ probably the day or two before, asking if Dave needed help with tech or anything, and he said he would see, and then it didn't work because he was busy. So I went to that show, and I was thinking of like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get in contact with this Dave guy? And I believe it was a while, probably in like August or something like that. It was the old, not old anymore because it's back in existence, but the All Star Circuit of Champions show at Black Rock. I went down there and I pretty much shook Dave's hand. I met him and I expressed my interest. And then for a while, I had to wait till the expo because I had never been to the expo before at Syracuse. So the plan was to go and introduce myself to Paul and Greg and Tana and just see what's available, see if there's any openings. Um, and that's how I like to do things. I don't really like to do email and text. I like to introduce myself, present myself in person. And when I went to the expo, I pretty much asked, hey, I have this interest in working tech, and it was more of like, we'll talk and we'll see. And then within a few weeks after that, Dave called me and said, I'm on board, and I was pretty excited. Actually, when he called me, I was on the way to go see my grandparents, so it was a good phone call. I can say that.
Oh, that's awesome. What's from your experience in sports cars and even like you said, being on the tech side in sports cars, what's is there anything that you learned along the way that you've been able to bring with you and use on the dirt side, or is it so completely different that there isn't a lot that transfers?
So it's very different. I would say if we're tearing motors down, I could transfer all that. But I've told many drivers and teams and Dave that this is a completely different car that I have to learn. I'm used to looking at like Porsche Cup cars, prototypes,
Yeah.
GT3s, and we are so heavy on the data side that I don't see any like I've only been to a couple dirt tracks in my life, And, this past year, or last year, I went to Super Dirt Week, and there's there might be some laptops here and there, but I don't really see a lot of data driven things in dirt because dirt is more of a mechanic driven sport from my perspective.
Yeah.
Where, I guess I could say that, when I used to tech some of the Carrera Cup cars, Porsche, and GT Road Challenge, because we used to have a Porsche Sprint Challenge, is that those are spec cars. So, and we also have spec cars too, which is the Sportsman and 305s. So I was familiar a little bit with working with spec cars, but again, you're dealing with a whole different anatomy of a car. So I really couldn't transfer a lot of things over other than just how I handle things from an official's perspective. So really it was like a lot of me learning the rule book before and during the season, and also asking questions to like Dave and Mike Emhoff as well, who knows sprint cars, entirely. So there's more or less I had to ask for some help, because I didn't want to go in there with, okay, I'm a sports car guy. I think I know everything. And when you step into a whole different world, you really don't know anything. And I'm not saying I don't know anything. It's just I'm learning something completely new, which
Yeah.
is pretty common for anybody who's just starting out. These people in the pit area have been doing it for years. And I never once went into anything with I know more than you, because that wouldn't be fair, and that would be just I'd make an idiot out of myself. So
Sure.
yeah, I just never could really transfer a lot of stuff over from sports car to dirt, because like I said, it's two different sports, two different cars.
I got to imagine, because if I think about my role as an announcer and the parts that are difficult about my job, I think of your role, and I've got to think, man, the parts of my job as an announcer that I think are hard probably pale in comparison to somebody whose role at the track is to assure that, number one, they're being objective, number two, that they're assuring that the competition is fair across the board to all competitors. And I imagine that can lead to some some uncomfortable conversations, or just not even uncomfortable conversations, but your role is anybody that's told their car's got to go to tech. They're just that there's I don't want to say there's like this black cloud, but there's got to be a little bit of an air of, you know, like, you don't know those guys. They may not know you. They might know Dave, but but I imagine that there's this underlying tension in the tech area on a normal night, whether you find anything that's outside of the rules or not. There's so how is it approaching that?
It is a little, I'll be honest, it is a little scary, because last year I was a new guy, I didn't know anybody. And yeah, tech officials in the racing world aren't really deemed as the good guys of the sport.
Right.
We're the guys that point out if the car's not legal, then the car's not legal. And I'm not, and this is just a general thing I'm going to say. If you have something on the car that's not legal, then it's probably most likely not going to pass tech. That's the whole additive that I had in GT Road Challenge, is that, some people, if your ride height wasn't the correct ride height, if you're too high or too low, then you have to go adjust that. Or if you're running different dampers, springs, anything that's on the car that's not series legal. We would have GT3 cars come in from an IMSA weekend, and their car would be set up to IMSA spec. So it would be so legal. So transferring that to dirt, it's much different to approach teams in dirt, because this is it's not like you're walking into someone's paddock area and transporter and you're talking to team managers and stuff. These are just normal people that do this for, I don't want to say fun, but just do this on the side. And yeah, I think for me, it was just, I always approached everybody positively and just would say, I'm checking this. And, for the most part, everybody was very welcoming and would sometimes joke with me. And, I would always joke back with them. So it was, after a little while, I'd get a little bit more comfortable. But at the first couple of weeks were a little difficult because I really didn't know how to approach anybody. And when you do have to approach somebody, you probably don't want to be all negative, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No,
Because
no, for sure.
because you're gonna, if you do, you're probably not gonna end well at the night because it'll be a late night. And I always feared that it was going to be a late night because of that. But for the most part, I mean, it was all positive, and I wouldn't be wanting to come back if it wasn't. So
Yeah. Oh, the approach is everything. I think there's a lot of folks that might listen to this that, can relate to that in their everyday 9 to 5 is, approach, no matter what the situation is or what you're dealing with, approach is half of the battle. So
yeah,
that's
it's kind of like people buy you, and you have to sell yourself to people, and you can't really. And I think checking cars and having us check it is probably the last thing they want us to do. But there's a rule book for a reason in sports, and you have to follow that. Otherwise, if you don't, then I don't know what to tell you. Or then you either don't run here or you just go somewhere else. I mean, that's not being disrespectful, in my opinion. That's just, I think that's very black and white. If you're not following the rules, then probably not going to work out. But
yeah.
it's very different because I'm comparing a sport. Because in my head now, I'm comparing a sport that's like millions of dollars worth, and then you're comparing dirt, which is like, blue collar, and you don't have teams where they have hundreds and thousands of dollars to really. I mean, this is their one car that they got. They might have a spare car or two, but it's not. These guys aren't paid employees of a team. There might be some of the guys on like the bigger teams like Stuart Friesen's and Matt Williamson's team that are paid decently, but these people that do work on crews aren't, to me, from my perspective, they aren't mechanics that are paid by these teams. These are people that are, like you said, 9 to 5, and they do this on the side. So really, when I had to really think about that, I thought about that probably in the second weekend of the season of, okay, these aren't guys that I'm used to working with. These are people like my dad or anybody else that I have in my life. So I have to approach this a little differently, because if I approach them like I would a sports car mechanic or team manager or engineer, then it's probably not going to go well, and they're probably not going to understand where I'm coming from. So you just have to change up a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, I actually like working with people that are a lot like my dad or anybody in the dirt world, because after a while, sports car racing engineers and team managers are probably the most difficult to deal with. And then you deal with the grumpy team owners that will complain about why my car's not legal.
Yeah.
Why are we getting sent to the back? Why am I, why is this getting taken off the car? So yeah, it's a lot of things you have to keep in mind and transfer and change up.
Oh, for sure. And I a lot of you're spot on there, because I think that, when we think about crews and team members at our racetrack, these are folks that are either family or friends. Some of them are paying their way in. Maybe their driver is chipping in on their pit pass or buying them a cheeseburger to say thank you for helping me out. It's
Yeah.
it is. It's a much different world.
Yeah, and you know what? I like that world, and I mean it, because I was used to having food catered or brought to me. Like we always would go to a big food tent, and it's just like, oh, this is, you just put it on your invoice, or
Yeah.
your team manager will write it off, or owner, and it's just it's a whole different world, Steven. It is.
Yeah.
And you know what? I like the dirt world. I like it more. I'll be honest. I mean, you might see on my Facebook page more sports car stuff, but I mean, one of my friends told me, he's like, I think you like dirt more than sports car. So I'm like,
Well,
yeah, I probably do.
we love that. We benefit from that. So that's great. Hey, let me ask you this question. So something that I know drivers and teams in our pit area just know needs to happen, but something that I had a fan ask me, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago. They said, "Hey, it's opening night, and I see this massive line of cars going over the scales. Like, do that many people not know, or are they trying to check how much their car weighs on opening night?" And I said, "Well, some of it could be that, but I said." The other thing that you have to think of is that, on opening night or the first time that car is at the track for the year, they've got to go through and do their safety inspection. And, again, that's something that drivers and teams know that needs to happen. But I think for those that are in the grandstands that have never, seen or even knew that was a process, what kind of process do the teams and the cars go through, the first, those first couple weeks of the year when we're doing the safety inspections? What are some of the things that you guys look for there?
Yeah, we look for like dates on belts, helmets, suits, and the certifications. Now, I mean, that's the most important stuff because a lot of that stuff can expire and it can become a safety hazard because that stuff will deteriorate over time. And we look at, fire bottle stuff, and we look at, I think David had me climb into the back of some of the cars last year and look at the expiration date on that stuff, and just look at all the helmets and gloves to see if there's any tear, rips, and all that. Um, the weight. So it's just the practical stuff to make sure that everything is up to date. Because we don't want somebody going out there with a ripped up suit and an expired helmet that's probably not going to hold up for the season,
Yeah.
and just making sure their car is, good. Because I mean, I'll be honest, I mean, I was kind of questionable on some cars. I'm like, I don't know if that's not legal, but I don't know if I would race that quite yet. You might want to fix that. But again, because I'm used to looking at prototypes and GT3s, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta stop with that because that feeling would always come in when we were doing annuals last year. Is that all right? You're not looking at Porsches and Lamborghinis and Audis and Actors anymore and prototypes. You're looking at the cars that you watched growing up. It's going to have dents in it. It's going to be broken somewhere. So, but yeah, that's the type of stuff we look for. Now, I mean, I work for a racing equipment company now, and I know a lot more about those expiration dates and the materials and suits that we all use. And I know in the dirt world, I think we use a lot of like Velocita and Zamp. We don't sell those, but the expiration date and all that stuff, we do understand a lot of that.
Yeah.
That's, SFI and FIA approved and all that. So.
Yeah. And with that, kind of on that train of safety and safety inspections, I had this conversation with Dave once, and I said to him, I said, even before the PR guy or the announcer or anybody that works in scoring, even before they know that there's a new driver that's there that has never been there before, I said, uh, if you're ever curious, hey, is there any new drivers in the pit area, any new cars in the pit area? I say you got to go talk to your tech guy, because the tech guy is one of the first guys that observes and sees. Oh wait, who's that? That's a new driver. That's a new car that we haven't looked at from a safety perspective yet. We got to go over and check in with those guys. And I always thought that was interesting that you want to see generally the first guy that knows about a new driver, new car that's racing there. Check in with the tech team, because they're on it. They know those things right away.
Yeah, I mean, I saw when we were doing practice last year, I saw a lot of cars that I didn't even see throughout the season. I think people were just coming for practice, but yeah, it's always a surprise to see who's going to come and run for either a couple weeks or the season, and it's always like, you might have Jimmy Phelps, or you might have Stuart Friesen. You might have somebody special, not special, but you might have somebody different to run there. Like for me, but I'm pretty sure it was well announced before. But seeing Matt Williamson was pretty cool to see
Yeah,
run with us, for the full season, and
sure.
just seeing more cars throughout the season is nice. More main super dirt competitors at our track is nice to see, and car counts like that, making it bigger is nice to see, and not throwing any shade to the weekly guys, or because I have respect for all the drivers and teams. But yeah, seeing new cars is cool. I mean, I'll be honest, that's how I met one of my favorite drivers growing up, because it was on, I think, the third or fourth weekend of May, and I met Gary Tompkins because I didn't know who this guy was in the '07 car.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I went over and I was just like looking at the car because it had a pretty premier sponsor on it. But I'm like, there's no way this person's sponsored by Salins, because I know who Joe Salin is. I'm pretty good friends with him. And lo and behold, it's Gary Tompkins. And I'm like, all right, how am I going to meet this guy? Don't make a big deal about it. So, because I'm sure everybody can see on my Facebook page that I'm a huge Gary Tompkins fan, and also
Yeah.
for Payne. I mean, he gave me the permission to use his 84 on pretty much everything that I use on my sim racing team. So, but yeah, it was cool to meet him because of seeing a new competitor, and because of that, I gained another great friendship. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's a good segue into, we've talked about your involvement on the tech team at Land of Legends, but big thing that you're into as well, and something I can appreciate, and others that listen to the podcast will appreciate too, is your involvement on iRacing. So I imagine with your background in all different forms of motorsports, that when it comes to iRacing, that your interests there are probably across the board too.
yeah, so I run my own sim racing team, and we're just entering the pro circuit with sports cars, and we still do like oval stuff, dirt, oval, and asphalt. But I've always had another dream of mine is to run my own sim racing team, and hopefully someday build like sim racing rigs and all that, or design them. And now I have a fully fledged team of uh, 15 people. Some are from Europe and some are from over here, and we're, like I said, we're just stepping into the pro circuit with it's an endurance series championship that runs monthly, and we're excited about that. And we start that at the end of May, beginning of June, and thankfully it doesn't coincide, or it doesn't overlap with Land of Legends. It happens in the morning, so I'll have to get up extra early on Saturdays now. So
Nice. Oh, that's cool. What you say endurance rate? How long are we talking on those races?
I think we're looking at 4 hours per
Okay.
per race. So that'll be. I think it's going to just be me and my friend Brandon from Scotland. He and I will race in GT3 AM, because there's a lot of guys in this endurance championship that are like far beyond our I rating. Like I'm only 1.5 and he's 2K, and there's guys in this championship that are like 6, 7, 8, 9K for any sport, sports car driver license guy in
Oh,
iRacing. So we decided to go in the AM GT3 class because we didn't want to get swamped. So
oh, that's cool. We there are a couple buddies of mine that I raced with quite a bit over the years. We were actually talking about trying to get ourselves ready to do an endurance race. Maybe enter one of the 24-hour races or 12-hour race, whatever it might be. And we we all kind of laughed about it because we traditionally all race dirt together, and so we're like, man, if we ever tried to do that 24-hour race, we're like, I know that myself and Mike Schultz, who's one of our track sponsors, he said, yeah, we could go anytime, and our other buddy Dave Callahan is like, yeah, I'm in, let's do that. And our other friend Bruce Hilton, who's um I'm not gonna age him, but he's a little bit older than us. Bruce said, "Yeah, I could probably do a 60-minute here or there," and so we we'll be a hot mess trying to do that. But we were all like, man, that'd be a lot of fun to try that because we're used to racing short little sprint races, of
Oh yeah.
a feature of 20, 30, 40 laps or something like that. So going on the endurance side would be it'd be a whole new ball of wax for us, but would be kind of fun to try. So it's interesting hearing that, and it sounds like you've got a pretty diverse group of drivers there, which is cool.
Yeah, the guys on my team, a couple of them are actually real life motorsport engineers for sports car teams overseas and then over here as well. And we do a lot of things strategy wise. Like we have spreadsheets galore. We work with Motec data and we try to build a setup. We make strategies. We try to, use the data. We always try to use the best data we can to make a good strategy up. I mean, we'll probably if there's a race at the end of the month, we'll probably spend 2 to 3 weeks doing 1 hour full fuel runs every other day just to give our engineers something to work with, just to see what our burn rate is and what the car is doing per driver. And like for example, myself, I never have to usually worry about fuel saving, but my other guys do because they're a lot faster than me. So yeah, we take it to the next level, and
Wow.
we
Yeah.
I mean, we have meetings twice a week, and we take this stuff pretty seriously. And I think actually Brandon just won our first endurance series solo in an LMP3 car, and that was really really impressive. We called a great strategy at the end. We came out ahead of the car that was behind us, and he was probably like 4 or 5 seconds behind. And uh, the guy PM'd us on iRacing. He's like, "How did you guys come out in front of us?" And we just said we had a good strategy going. So uh, yeah,
So so not to give away any secrets or anything, but when I hear that, and I'm a guy that watches a lot of NASCAR, probably more than sports cars. I do watch that on occasion, but when I hear like we had a good strategy, and so I'm thinking, on the NASCAR side where a team will short pit or they'll try to be the first ones to pit. We just saw that last weekend where a team tried to come into the pits first to have those fresh tires coming back out. So for on your side though, on the sports car side, what are some of those things that you can do that, if you're, let's say, had that many seconds behind, like what are some of the things that a sports car team could do to strategy wise to try to flip the script there?
well, the first most important thing is look at the fuel. How much fuel do we have left in the tank before we actually really need to pit? Because what I'll tell my driver is usually it's me that tells the driver, and our engineers will say it again. I'll usually say extreme lift and coast, and that's fuel save extremely. Um, I don't mind sharing this. It's not really a secret. It's just kind of like a thing you want to do. If you pit early, you're going to pay for it because you're going to lose probably a position or two. So our number, we look at the laps per fuel. We don't look at what's in the tank. We look at the laps per fuel. So
Okay.
if you're below 1.9, you're pitting. So it doesn't matter, how good you feel. We're going to say, all right, driver, pit this lap, please. Pit this lap, extreme lift and coast. And what he'll do is he'll extreme lift and coast and take it very slow. And we'll say, hey, if you want to overtake, be patient and overtake on a straight. Don't overtake in a turn. And we'll try our best to stay ahead. But fuel saving is a huge portion of how your strategy is going to work out. That and just seeing what the data was from our practice sessions as well, from what the driver was doing during his full fuel run, and what fuel per laps is he burning, how's the tires, how are they doing, and it all comes down to fuel. And do we need to take tires? Do we need to take a windshield tear off? We really need to, but we don't. And also with rain now in iRacing, that also changes the whole thing. So
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's another thing because I'm the designated range driver, so I have to live out the misery of all the spray and all the, because we alternate from GT3 to prototype, and I'm a better prototype driver than I am GT3. And prototypes in the rain on that game are not so good, other
Yeah.
than the P2. Actually, we came last year. We did a 3 hour or no 2 hour and 40 IMSA endurance race, and I came second overall in the rain at Watkins Glen, like second overall, like second place in GTPs, and I was in an LMP2, so I'm like, okay, we're gonna do well with the 6 hour, and we did okay at the 6 hour race. We in that day I had to work at the dirt track at Land of Legends, and I was a little mopey because we didn't finish where I wanted to. But yeah, it all comes down to how well you're doing per stint, how well you're doing fuel saving and taking care of them tires, and
Wow.
overtaking's another giant thing as well, because
Yeah.
you don't want to overtake the wrong person in the wrong car. If it's a lap down car and you take them down or take them out or race them hard, they're probably not going to be happy with you. So you
Sure.
want to try to make friends out on the track while you can. So
Yeah. Wow. I'll tell you, I learned something there. There's way more involved in that than I even realized. So that's pretty cool, man.
we're looking at data the entire time. So
Yeah.
we're it's not. I mean, we have another. So I have 5 different sets of teams under my sim racing team, NCM, on iRacing. So we have the 3 pro teams, and then we have 2 teams that are just like your gentleman driver type of team. So like
Okay.
if you and anybody from our world wants to come on and join my team and race, I'm like, yeah, you can go in that team, and just if you want to just do it for fun. If you don't want to do those data debriefs and hour-long fuel runs per week and all that advanced stuff, then that'd be the team you join. So
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that's
I have Land of Legends on the side of my cars. So
yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I like I said, I think with me and my buddies when we race, we're and like I said, we race a lot of dirt, but it's like our focus of the race is just try not to knock the right front off it.
yep,
It's
yeah.
it's a whole different deal there. So that's pretty neat. But
Oh, it is, because I do some dirt racing on as well. And this week I'm actually really good in I call it a crate late model, but they call it the limited late model.
yeah,
I'm pretty
yep,
sure I have the terminology wrong, but they're at Lernerville this week, and I'm really good at that track for some reason. I think a couple of seasons ago, and even last season, I would finish no worse than second. It would always be a first, second, first, second, first, second type of finish.
yeah,
And uh, actually, I broke that streak. I don't know if it's broken, but I came in fifth, and I got outraced bad. I think the strength of field was like 3K, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna do well in this, and I came in fifth. So
yeah,
I think it's what makes me upset a little bit about that is, why am I better in a late model and I'm not so good in a dirt modified? Really upsets me a lot, because I spend a lot of time at like Charlotte and Oswego and Lernerville, and I can't do well in the
sure,
modified, which upsets me, because all of us in this world are from the Northeast and upstate New York, in which we should be naturally good in a modified. Uh,
right, right,
but I'm not, so it makes me a little upset.
yeah.
But yeah,
I
it's
think I think our favorite tracks to run were I'd say probably Williams Grove was at the top of my list, and Charlotte was not far behind. We would always do well. I mean, we ran a lot of sprint car stuff, and then the modifieds went when they came out. But when they first brought out dirt and had the sprint cars, we were pretty solid at Williams Grove, man. I that place until it got real slippery. Like I loved Williams Grove, man. You could just go into turn one and just keep her right to the wood, and then feather your way through three and four. But yeah, no, that's fun. That's
yeah.
cool.
There's one track I do not enjoy on iRacing, and that's Weedsport. But I like Weedsport in real life. I've only been to Weedsport once, and that was like in 2010. So a lot's changed since then. But
Oh yeah,
I don't really like Weedsport. I think I had a bad wreck in the small block there, in turn one,
Okay.
which was not fun to deal with after.
Well,
Tank of iRating was not fun.
let me give you a suggestion then. If you're looking to take in Weedsport, since all these things have changed there, I think you better circle the Empire Street Stock Series race there, because that last year was an amazing race, and I'm not just saying that because Mark Manutlo won, and he's a bit of a goofball, but that was a great race, and the full fenders have a pretty cool history at Weedsport, so put that on your radar. That'd be a good one to take in.
Oh yeah, I think that's a cool series now that we have a traveling series for the street stocks, because I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think they get enough credit. Just
Yeah,
my own opinion, you know, because I nowadays, I mean, Stephen, you might remember in like the mid 2000s, I mean, it used to just be like street stocks and pure stocks,
yeah,
and the street stocks used to look like different, and nowadays it looks like more of a spec type of class, very similar to like a late model, but it's not really a late model. I mean,
yeah.
I
Well,
know CRS builds those cars, and they're actually really cool looking cars.
oh yeah.
I think that's a really cool traveling series now. I mean, I do enjoy watching them. Not saying that I never did, but like watching them now, it's like it's a whole new class now. So
Well, and being so I can speak from my experience, like being a kid that grew up going to Dundee Raceway Park and Black Rock. That our street stock guys now, we're what 10-inch tires away from being what the super stocks used to be, and boy, what a fun class that was to watch. And all the diversity of drivers that they used to run in that class. And I think the street stocks, as they have evolved, have become much like those, and now our hobby stocks are similar to what the street stocks used to be in the time period you're talking about. So it's
yeah,
it's just kind of how that evolves, and how the rules evolve, and all that. But I'm with you, man. I anybody that knows me knows that I'm a guy that really enjoys the fenders, and I really like to give them their due credit, when it's there, because man, they can put on an incredible race. And we have seen over the years, and I kind of like how we put them on the race night schedule, is one starts the racing and one ends the night, with the exception of the new Legends sportsman. But I like that they're on both sides of the racing card, because there's a lot of people that, have told me in the past that, hey, in the past, once the big blocks are done, I'm out of here. I've seen the
yeah.
main event, and that's good enough for me, and I'm gone. And there's still people that do that, but I've talked to more and more people that have said, we don't always leave right away when the big blocks are done, because typically it's going to be the street stocks or the hobby stocks that follow them up, and those guys put on a darn show. So
I 100% agree, and there's a couple things I want to touch on there. Is that I definitely agree. I remember sitting in the stands as a spectator well before I started working at Land of Legends. Just yeah, after the big blocks, we're out of there because one, we want to get out of the parking lot and beat traffic and get home and go to bed, or watch a NASCAR race at the end if it's still on. But I think it's always important to keep watching the classes that they present, because it I think it looks better in the stands where it doesn't look like a ghost town. And um, I mean, I enjoy watching everybody. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be unbiased, but I have always enjoyed watching Mike Welch in the street stocks.
yeah,
Longest time. I mean, I always thought his cars looked cool. I mean, there was a time when I'm gonna get this wrong, but it was a red car. It looked like half a car, half a truck, and it was
okay,
very tiny. I don't know what he probably would know what I'm talking about if I showed him a picture or showed you, but I always enjoyed watching him, and I mean that was always someone that I would pull for in that class. No disrespect to the other competitors in our classes, but
Yeah.
yeah, those guys put on a great show, and what I was used to for a long time, because there was a time, Stephen, when I stopped going to Land of Legends, and that was during like eighth and ninth grade for a little bit, and I have no idea why. But up until then, I was always used to you'd start with the pure stock, street stock, sportsman, and then you'd end up the night with the big blocks. And then
Yes.
after that, if there was time and if they opened the pit area up, they'd let fans walk through the pits. So nowadays, it's like, okay, we might start with street stocks, but then we're going to go to 305s, and then we're going to go to the sportsman, big block, and hobby stocks, or we might switch it up. Which it's not like an issue for me. It's just it's very different to what I'm used to living in, and maybe I'm still stuck in like the 2009 or 2006 to 2010 era. But it was much different back then when it was Canandaigua Speedway, and I mean, if I can still call it that.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, you're right. I agree with you. Like when we were going as kids, that was the same deal too, as the modifieds were last. They always were.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but at the same time, to your point, back then at most there were four classes,
right.
and so that's different now. And I've said, and other people have said for years that yeah, we've probably got one or two too many classes for a weekly, but with that it's the we don't have a class necessarily that is hurting in numbers, that wouldn't justify running that division. So, and on top of that, I don't care how many cars you have in the class. There's not a class at our racetrack right now that I would point to and could even begin to say, well, these guys just the races just aren't that good, and because rather even the new legends, the younger future legends that are just getting their feet wet, they've put on some really good races too. I've said for years, you don't have to have a field of 24 cars to put on a good race. But,
Absolutely.
at the same time, like, yes, because of the number of divisions we have, sometimes there are those nights when everything doesn't go exactly perfect that, we're knocking up against that 11 o'clock curfew. But, um, I agree with you, man. I grew up in the day when the modifieds always ran last, and that was just the expectation. People knew that was going to happen. People didn't complain about it. And if you tried to do that now, there'd be a mutiny. So that
It
that's
would be.
that's how times change, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Well, at the end of the day, the curfew is a hard thing to work against, and
yeah.
uh, I think what
Well, it's a good and a bad thing, right? Like some nights it's not great because not every night is perfect. And, if we get a couple of sprint car flips that take a little bit to clean up, or, we have a big pile up in turn one that takes some time, or, maybe we need a few extra minutes to get the track ready for the features, that can really throw things off. But I'll say on the other hand, though, is I do like that we have that hard stop because it we never are granted that wish of just running as long as we want to. Like and I think that's a good thing for fans because they know when they go to the Land of Legends, they know we have to be done by 11 o'clock. We're not going to run till midnight. We're not going to run till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. We have that hard stop. And so they know. And in this day and age of entertainment, I think that's really that's not a bad thing to have. Every promoter or event operator in the entertainment industry, knows that 3 hour mark, 3 hour 15 minutes is kind of that sweet spot. So even the times that we run, from 6:30 to 11 is kind of over that mark, but still I think that 11 o'clock hard stop is more of a benefit to us than it is a detriment on those nights when things don't always go perfect, because we can always make adjustments, and you never want to have a class that you have to reschedule and bring back, to run again. But sometimes things do happen, and you have to do that. Unfortunately, we don't have to do that all that often. So, I think there is more benefits than there is negatives there. Now, if I was sitting next to Paul Cole, I don't know if he'd agree with me on that or not, but that's just my perspective of, being somebody that works at the track, but also being a big racing fan. If I choose to extend the elbow and go pay for a ticket to go watch somewhere, I'm going to be a little less likely to do so if I know that I'm going to, sit there for a marathon, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some really good entertainment packed into a fair amount of time, and then, I can still get home, before the calendar flips to the next day. That, as a fan of racing, that's important to me, and I know a lot of other people feel that way too.
Yeah, I mean, in with anything else, it's always a good show, no matter what. If we got to
Yeah.
make changes, if we have to take this out or shorten something, if we even have to short a race up by like a few laps, I'm not sure. I can't recall if that was done last year, but we as a facility track try to make it so we can give the fans something.
Yeah.
We try very hard to give them a show, and I credit everybody that tries to make that happen. I mean, there was times last year where we had to do a lot of changes to make
Oh,
something happen.
championship night when we
Yeah, I
ran
mean,
features only. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that was I mean, I remember having like I think two meetings that day, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like what are we gonna do? And
Yeah.
it's just like it just amazed me to just be a part of those meetings and just like, okay, well, this is what we have to do. It's different, but at the end of the day, I think we do try our best, and we're all human at the end of the day. And if you might have a fan or two or somebody that's not going to be happy with any outcome, even teams and drivers. It's like, well, this is what happens in racing. I know that dirt racing is not rain friendly, where sports car racing is, and you can't put rain tires on dirt cars. I don't even know if that's possible. It's probably not. I wouldn't try it. But when rain is the enemy, and at the end of the day, it's not great. But again, we always try to put on a good show for everybody, and it it never seems to disappoint me. So I
Yeah.
mean, I give Paul and everybody, all of us, and anybody else credit to make it all happen, because I mean, there's been some times where I've heard some people in the stands that weren't happy with this outcome, and it's like, well, it's extremely hard to run a track. It's not easy.
No.
And I'm just a tech guy, and I'm just a normal person at the end of the day. So I mean, I might not know how to run it, and it's just like at the end of the day, I can't. Um, I couldn't do what upper management decides to do. So
Sure.
it's just a lot of coordinating and logistics. But no, I think we have what we do, no matter what the order is. I think we still do a good job at fitting all that in. And
Oh yeah.
there's times, I mean, I had the idea of pitching it to somebody. I'm like, I think we should go with this order, like we had in 2009. We had the big blocks last, but then it's like, again, you said marathon. It's like you don't want to have people sitting in there, in the stands for a while. But I mean, it does get a little impatient after a while. I mean, I can remember when I was little, my dad would get impatient because he'd be like, "What is going on?" In case somebody was taking a long time. But at the end of the day, you're probably trying to fix something. So
Sure.
yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day, and we still get through it, and we still put on a good show.
Let's wrap on this question, and it's one that I'm kind of curious about, because I know when I talk to some folks that I know well that's in the pit area, sometimes, again, like you just said, they're racing, they're working on cars, they might have to fix something before they have to line up for their feature. And one thing that I kind of have taken for granted as an announcer is, as the announcer, you see everything on track. Like, if something happens or something big happens or hey, that was a really good race, or maybe there was an incident on track and a couple of drivers boiled over or whatnot, I take for granted the fact that as the announcer, I generally am seeing all that stuff. I know almost everything that's going on during the event on track, but for crews, drivers, or even somebody like yourself, I'm curious on a given night, do you get to see a lot of the on-track action for features? Do you end up missing a lot, or maybe only missing a little bit? What's that experience like? Because as somebody that's actively working during the race night, that's something that I might take for granted. Being in where I am in the tower. I'm just curious how much of the race night you do end up getting to see.
So for the feature, I mean, I see the hot laps and heats, but for the feature races, I'm usually teching cars with Dave, and I might catch the street stock race or the 305 because I did look after the 305 class last year. I would tech them for a little bit. So I'd watch their race entirely, but I would never be able to catch like a lot of the sportsman and big block race. I would always catch a glimpse of it. If we were on the golf cart, we would stop and watch for a bit. But I wouldn't. There was times when I wouldn't even be able to watch the races. But if it was a series race, like a Super Dirt Series race, I'd be able to watch it entirely. Because Dave would be teching those cars, and I didn't have anything to do with that. I just help out the scales and
Sure.
stuff. So yeah, I mean it just depends on really the night, but for the most part, during some of the features, I'm usually probably teching cars,
Yeah.
or going around and seeing what needs to be done, or just doing a task that needs to be done.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I kind of wondered if that was the case. So, hey, Nolan, this was a lot of fun, man. Appreciate the time to get to learn about somebody that folks see at the racetrack that had no idea what kind of story or what kind of background you might have had. So I appreciate you coming on to tell your story. And all right, man, appreciate it. Folks, hope you enjoyed this episode here with Nolan from our tech team at the Land of Legends. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have more interviews as we get ready to kick off our 2025 campaign here at the Land of Legends.
Land of Legends Raceway fans, tune in each and every week of the racing season to Where Legends Are Made, a podcast dedicated to covering the drama, excitement, and hear from the drivers from your favorite dirt track. Stephen Ovens and Brad Ovens walk you through the week that was Where Legends Are Made. Subscribe on Apple or Google Podcasts.